SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae has put hundreds of millions back into the hands of Mississippi's citizens, expanding the state's affordable college and career savings program and also returning record amounts of unclaimed money. Check out how Treasurer David McRae's office can help you, your business, or your organization. Treasury.ms.gov.
With Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Yes, indeed. So if those are tuned in via video, note to today, I'm wearing the red shirt. Now, for many years, it was my custom to wear a red shirt on Fridays, and in this particular case, that was in support of our troops. Red standing for Remember Everyone Deployed. And man, is that ever important today? With so many of our warriors in harm's way. So sad to see that 6 U.S. service members are dead following an aircraft crash in Iraq. By the way, CENTCOM says this was not the result of enemy fire or enemy attack. Don't know all the other details at this point, Rhino. I haven't seen if any news has been released or official statement or explanation for the mishap, the crash. But you know this, when you're operating those big assets like that, in those conditions, at that rate and level, stuff happens. It's impossible otherwise. So I've got the red shirt on today. Again, remember everyone deployed. The letters, of course, of the word red, and that's the purpose. And,
according to an update from USA Today that broke 3 minutes ago.
Okay. Yeah, 3 minutes.
The 6 U.S. service members were killed when their refueling aircraft crashed after a midair collision over western Iraq.
Oh, shoot. So, lot of potential causes for a midair, as you know, air traffic control, whoever that is.
Well, I mean, if it's a refueling plane, then there's even more possibilities of a collision during refueling.
Good point. A very delicate and difficult exercise. Yeah, it happens all the time, but it's still, the risk is higher involving two aircraft traveling at a high rate of speed, trying to connect up. We don't really know the other details. So our hearts and prayers go out to those families and our enormous and eternal gratitude to the soldiers involved, the military service members involved, and, of course, everyone who has been injured or, even worse yet, lost their lives. I heard Secretary of War Pete Hegseth this morning had a little press conference along with Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just giving an update on the situation. And he talked about this and how war is hell. It is. It's a terrible thing. If it's okay, I came across some scripture I thought, Rhino, was appropriate for the situation. I'm just going to read that. It's from Isaiah 46, verses 8 through 10. Remember this and stand firm. Recall it to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former things of old, For I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. I just felt that was appropriate for the current situation. So say your prayers, folks, that no other Americans, be they members of our armed forces or civilians, are injured or lose their lives as part of this excursion, as the president likes to refer to it. I personally think that we're going to get through this, and the best will occur after this is behind us. Ridding the world of these menaces, these uncivil, inhumane, wicked, evil people that don't deserve to breathe, honestly. It's hard that one could harbor that sort of hate as they have. And it causes problems for everybody. But once we get through this, I believe you'll see better days ahead, not only from a safety and security perspective, but also from an economic perspective. It's painful. I know, Rhino, I've talked to some of our precious farmers who are talking about how this is causing them heartache, financial heartache, and problems with the price of fertilizer and anything, of course, that's got significant petroleum input to it. And, man, I feel for them. I really do. I hate that they and everybody are bearing the brunt of this. And, it's a tough decision to make, and it's lonely shoes that the president walks in to make these kinds of decisions. He knows what this is imposing on the American people in terms of economic hardship and, of course, more importantly, loss of life. This is a tough deal, and I hate that these people are just bad people, and how much better off the world would be without these bad people. And hopefully that's where we're headed. I felt good after hearing Secretary Hegseth's remarks this morning. He was very direct, very blunt. And honestly, Rhino, when you hear him talk, it doesn't sound like there's much left to the military of Iran, if you could call it that, right? I mean, it's pretty much said their navy's at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. And he not only pointed out that most of their military capability has been neutralized, he pointed out something I hadn't thought about, which is American and Israeli forces have been taking out the various facilities that manufacture military assets, making it difficult, if not impossible, at least for a long time, to rebuild, re-equip, resupply. I think that's wise. That's smart. But I feel like that when we can sort of declare victory is when the government of Iran is in the hands of somebody other than whomever the hell it's in the hands of, because that's not really clear at this point. The president has indicated that, as did the secretary this morning. But when the Strait of Hormuz can return to normal operations, I saw an interview this morning early on the Business Channel with John Katsimatidis. He is a New York radio talk show host and also heavily involved, very wealthy individual, heavily involved in the refining industry. He's Greek, of Greek descent, and he was talking about conversations he was having with some Grecian business executives that own ships, tankers, that are in the strait right now, trying to move. And he indicated that what's just bothering the heck out of them, he said that there's an average of 30 crew on each of those vessels, and that he fears for their safety. That's his major concern. The heck with the oil, would that cause a financial loss to their company? Heck yeah, of course it would, but that's not even in the league of the loss or the harm to human life. And so this is an executive these are executives that feel personally responsible. Of course, they didn't know, what was going to happen at this point, and I don't think foresaw that really the only last desperate option Iran has is to wreak havoc in the Strait. They know that. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to make that as difficult as possible, though they're allowing their ships to still sail through there and get to China, which is just disgusting. It's like the modern-day evil axis of China, Russia, and Iran. And really in Iran, it's the mullahs and Hezbollah and those regimes. Man, pray, folks. Let's get through this thing. And I think there's a better situation for the world and for the United States on the other side. Let's just hope it occurs sooner rather than later. We're taking a break right now. In the Element Wealth studio, Alex Adams, Assistant Secretary, Administration for Children and Families at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Very honored to have Mr. Adams on. Up next. Stay with us.
I'm here at the shop.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Jump up! Get it! Hey! Devil with the blue dress,
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our great pleasure to welcome now Alex Adams, Assistant Secretary, Administration for Children and Families at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Hey, Alex, thanks for coming on.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Tell us about this big announcement this past week. Governor Reeves held a press conference along with the Commissioner of the Department of Child Protection Services, Andrea Sanders, and it appears that Mississippi is joining a federal program that is targeting the growing demand for foster homes to try to alleviate some of the pressure there. Tell us about that, Alex.
Yes, sir. Well, late last year, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump signed an executive order that was wide-ranging with a goal of improving child welfare outcomes for kids in foster care. Here at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, we're doing our part to execute on that executive order. And what we're focused on is a home for every child. What we mean by that is nationally, there's too few foster homes relative to the number of kids coming into the system. Nationally, if I have 100 foster kids coming into the system, we only have 57 homes to care for them. We can do better, and we must do better. So what we're doing is we're aligning our financing, our policies, our regulations to support states increasing the ratio of homes to kids. And we're thrilled to have Mississippi's partnership in this. Governor Reeves has demonstrated a strong commitment to improving child welfare outcomes. He has an all-star commissioner and Commissioner Andrea Sanders. And we're thrilled to welcome Mississippi as the fifth state to that initiative. They join Oklahoma, Missouri, Tennessee, and Louisiana. So right now we've got a high batting average among SEC states, and I look forward to growing that map.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So full disclosure, my daughter, Alex, works for Child Protection Services, is the communications director, and works quite a bit with, as you indicated, the all-star commissioner, Andrea Sanders. We're so blessed to have her in the state of Mississippi. As you well know, Alex, not an easy job whatsoever. And honestly, it's sad that it's even necessary that we have these situations with children, not just in Mississippi, but across the state. And I can also share that my wife and I were foster parents years ago for a couple of teenagers that suddenly lost their mother, their single mother in our community. And where I was going with that is, yeah, it's an arduous process. It seemed to be a little too difficult, right, to become foster parents. And I think there are a lot out there that would be willing to step up if it weren't so dang hard. Is that what this is designed to address?
Among other things. First, thank you and your wife for your service as a foster family. Anyone that's willing to open their homes and their hearts to a child, there's a special crown for you. So we'd certainly appreciate what you've done and would encourage others to follow that positive example. As I said, we're trying to increase the ratio of homes to kids. There's two ways to get there. You can boost the number of homes through recruitment, how you license, and as you said, there's too much red tape around licensing. In some states, I don't know Mississippi's regulations specifically, but in some states, they'll throw out foster families if they won't make certain commitments, like affirming the use of certain pronouns for kids. In some states, they look at vaccine records for pets. When we don't have enough homes for kids, what happens to those remaining kids is they get placed in hotels, they get placed in Airbnbs, they get placed in group home settings. They're not stable, loving, nurturing environments that every child deserves. I don't know about you or some of your listeners, but if my choice is between putting a child in an Airbnb with a revolving cast of caregivers or kicking out a faithful, qualified foster family because we don't know the vaccine status of their pet rabbits, that's a very easy choice for me. So by going down this route, we are working with states to clear away the brush. Let's make it as easy as possible to get licensed. Let's roll out the red carpet to any prospective foster parent. Let's do faith-based partnerships to engage our churches and our houses of worship in recruitment. Let's provide top-notch white glove service to all existing foster families so that we preserve them and stabilize them and don't have them burning out and turning over too quickly. So there's a lot of things to boost the number of homes. Most importantly, though, what this initiative is focused on is also reducing the number of kids coming into foster care. President Trump has said the best foster care system is one that's not needed in the first place. And what I was really excited about when we talked to the governor as well as the commissioner is they're talking about prevention, preventing kids coming into foster care by wrapping around families, providing supports, providing effective prevention. However, when that is not possible, having that army of stable, loving, nurturing foster homes available to them. So I would treat this as a dynamic process. We're grateful to have Mississippi's partnership.
So, Alex, you indicated that some other states have already signed up for the program. Is it too early to tell what the impact has been?
Certainly too early to tell. All of these states have signed on in a number of weeks. So generally what happens is we secure the commitment from the state that they're going to join this pilot initiative, and then we finalize the paperwork for their PIP. So there's benefits to the state, but then there's some reciprocal obligations. So what will happen next with Mississippi is they'll sign a PIP, a program improvement plan with us, where we give them regulatory relief. We get off of their back. I'm sitting here in a limestone building in Washington, D.C. I don't know what's best in the Mississippi Delta for these kids. Commissioner Sanders does. Governor Reeves does. So we're getting off of their back. We're returning to the traditional view of federalism and allowing them to pick the suite of services that best meet the needs of their citizens. In return, I get monthly reports on the ratio of homes to kids. So every month I'll know Mississippi's ratio of homes to kids. We'll see if they're making progress. We'll see if they're losing ground. We'll see if they're treading water. But what's exciting about that is we'll get that each month, and then we'll be able to compare it to those other states. Every state that joins this initiative will be reporting that identical measure at that same time. So we'll be able to see some competition, just like there's a little bit of competition between Ole Miss and some of the SEC schools. We'll be able to see how they're doing on the ratio of homes to kids, knowing that there's multiple inputs into it.
Sure.
Some states might focus more on boosting the number of homes. Other states might focus on reducing the denominator of kids through effective prevention. What I loved about our conversations with the leadership team in Mississippi is it's clear to me they are going to focus on both sides of that equation. I'm confident in their success, and then we'll see let the best state win in terms of how they increase the ratio over time.
Sounds like a great plan. So, Alex, just clarify for us. Clearly, there needs to be some degree of vetting, right, for potential foster parents. You can't just let it be a free-for-all. But you can't be so crazy as to say we're worried about the vaccines you're giving to your pet rabbits. I mean, that defies common sense. So are we ensuring through these new policies and new guidelines that, we're going to make sure these people truly are qualified, but we're not going to require all this other stuff that's really irrelevant?
Yeah, well, my agency, ACF, publishes model licensing standards that we encourage all states to look at. It tries to right-size that balance. Certainly, we want every foster parent to have a criminal background check. We want to make sure every foster parent goes through a child abuse and neglect registry check. We don't want to place children in settings that could be unstable. One of the things we advocate for is different standards of licensing for relatives versus non-relatives.
Okay.
For relatives, there's already family connections. The child already has some familiarity with that caregiver. And when you place a child with a relative caregiver, it often stabilizes their environment. It's more likely that the child will be reunified or find a path to permanency quicker. It is much more likely that they'll maintain religious and cultural traditions. So placing a child with relatives is generally, should be the default option unless there is an evidence-based reason not to place a child with a relative. So having different licensing standards for relatives, maybe you don't care about the square footage in the bedroom, or you're more willing to tolerate bunk bed setups, things like that. What our agency advocates for is different standards for relatives versus non-relatives, and we do have model licensing standards for non-relatives that we'd encourage anyone to take a look at.
Okay. And so just to clarify, though, the states still have a fair degree of control over those standards, right? We got about 30 seconds left.
Yes, sir. This whole initiative is to return power to the state so that they can decide what they need to get their ratio of homes to kids up. We're here to come alongside them and support them, and we're grateful for the leadership of Governor Reeves and the whole leadership team in Mississippi for partnering with us on this.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining that to us. Sounds like a good program. We're pleased that Mississippi is joining it. Thanks a lot. Alex Adams, Assistant Secretary, Administration for Children and Families at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
Thank you, sir.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I think that's we're pointing that at the Mississippi legislature, right? Come together, because they're everything but together, it would seem. Man, oh man. So it's nothing but a bunch of hold my beer, and it is what it feels like. The Senate.
It's the inevitable end result of Republicans gaining power.
I think that seems to be the case, and we are seeing some of that at the federal level as well, of course. But a lot of stuff going on.
I may agree with them politically, but it's just the stupidity that happens when they try to play politics. It's just
what it's all about.
Mind-numbing.
So you just told me off air. I was out yesterday. Appreciate Dave filling in. I was fortunate to speak to the Madison County Bar Association. Enjoyed addressing a number of attorneys in Madison County. But what were you saying about maybe we should only meet during election year.
Yeah, I mean, if the legislature is really only going to take major action during election years, then we might as well just hold the legislature in session during election year.
Oh, my gosh. Crazy stuff. Your markets, quick check of the money. I don't know what happened, Rhino, but it started out, as Charles Emerson Winchester famously said on MASH, just prior to the little mouse races through the maze, when he was partaking of some of the drug that were being fed to the mouses, and it got to him. He said, well, it started out as such an enjoyable evening. The morning started that way as well for the markets. The Dow has been back and forth over the unchanged line. The NASDAQ, it went from being up about 150 to now down 115. It's just volatile because of this stinking war. I'm ready to get this thing behind us. Crude oil up to $96 a barrel. And there are fears that if this thing persists and we can't get oil through the strait there, some industry analysts are projecting $150 a barrel oil, which would be insanity. Just think about a 50+% increase in the price of gas over today, which is already crippling many. I do believe once it's over, I'm remaining optimistic that it's going to end soon, that we will see the price retreat. We'll see a return of the normal flow and traffic through the strait, and we could get oil down in the 50s again. I do believe that's quite possible, which would be actually lower than it was before strikes were launched against Iran. And that would be like rocket fuel to the old economy. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm confident in. And at this point, we have to trust the president and his inner circle, his leadership team, and their decisions. I would be lying if I didn't say I worry about the capabilities of this regime in sort of a covert fashion, wreaking havoc. Clearly, they're still concerned about moving traffic through the strait, even though that for the most part their military capability has been decimated. Still, though, the U.S. military says, yeah, even though the president has authorized them to escort tankers, they're saying, yeah, until it's safe. I don't know exactly what the standard is for that, but they're pushing back and saying we're not going to do it. And I respect them for that. I believe our military leaders understand that quite well, what the risks and threats are, and have way more information than we do. Have you noticed that, Rhino? Suddenly on social media, everybody's become a war strategist and an oil expert, like overnight on social media. Oh, my gosh. No, we really don't know everything. And we shouldn't know everything. Because if we know it, that means the enemy knows it, and that ain't good. So let's hope we get quick resolution. That's for sure. We got Caleb Sailors. You know who he is. He's with SuperTalk Mississippi News at 11:20 today. At 12:05, Scott Waller from the Mississippi Business Alliance. He's the executive vice president and president of the Business Alliance Foundation, and Dr. Angela Sheils, CEO of Children's Foundation of Mississippi. We're going to talk about child care access challenges for employees in the state of Mississippi. That continues to be, it's across the country, honestly. That continues to be a challenge. Now, yesterday, you probably saw that the president authorized the release of 172 million barrels of oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Other member nations of the International Energy Agency also agreed to release some of their stockpiled reserves, total of 400 million barrels to be released over the next few weeks into the market, which should have a small impact. But just so you'll understand, we consume just under 20 million barrels per day. So this release from America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve amounts to just under 9 days of consumption. So it ain't a lot. The other thing is that the SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, has a capacity of just over 700 million barrels. It presently has about 415 in its possession. So this is releasing a little more than 40% of that. That is a concern, and I hope the president will act to replenish not only that, but get that reserve maxed out to its 700-plus barrel capacity. Wouldn't be a good time to do it now with the price elevated, but let's hope that, again, this has a little impact on the price, and we can get back to normal where the Strait of Hormuz is used to funnel about 20 to 25% of the total world's oil. I know a lot of people, you've seen this, Rhino, say, well, gee, we don't actually import a lot from there. Why does that affect the price here? And it's because the global price is reflected everywhere. And so if there's less supply outside of our borders because of this, that drives the price up. Well, that price is applied everywhere, not just specifically where it is shipped, processed, and ultimately consumed. It is globally traded and thus globally priced. It's just a function of global demand and supply. And by the way, the markets, now the word is they're selling off because they're worried about oil. Once again, the personal consumption expenditures, that's a measurement of inflation released this morning. That, by the way, the Fed's favorite metric and benchmark. It came in and showed that inflation is relatively calm on an annualized basis, on a month-over-month basis. However, bear in mind that's pre this spike in the price of oil. So I think the next report will be key. But let's hope between now and the next report that we get back to normal. I did hear the Secretary of War this morning, Pete Hegseth, say he expects this to be the most intense day of action thus far. Now, we're in week 3 of the conflict. Looks like we're headed to week 4 based on what he said. Neither the President nor the Secretary, the Joint Chiefs, the military brass are saying, here's when we think we're going to be done. And I wouldn't expect them to give any hard date, but rather just saying we're going to stay until the job's done. The president yesterday was on the road. You probably saw that. He's, I believe, in Ohio, and was it Michigan? I can't remember exactly, Rhino. He was on the road, though, and he's really talking the affordability message, of course, as we approach the midterms, that being the top of mind for American voters. And he said, we can't stop now. We got to finish the job, right? So it felt a little bit like he was trying to sell it. And I know Americans in general, they get weary after you've been at war for a while. And, every day when you see more servicemen or even civilians, God forbid, who lose their lives or injured, Americans, they have very
Ohio and Kentucky.
Kentucky, okay. Very little patience on that. So I get it. I mean, that's always been the case. And like the great FDR said, Fallow hates war. I hate war. Fallow being the dog, of course. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
For all your glass needs.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
So, Rhino, the subject of term limits is a hotly debated one, of course. And there are many Americans who would like to see term limits imposed on our members of Congress. There are many that would like to see term limits imposed on our legislators. And there doesn't seem to be an appetite, however, among those under the dome. Now, I believe that would require a constitutional amendment, right? And that, as you know, that standard is pretty high. I want to make sure I get this right. I think I may get it backwards. 2/3 of the Congress, both houses, and 3/4 of the states to ratify the Constitution. I may have that backwards, but it's a very high bar. I know you're looking it up right now. And there is an organization that for many years has been pushing for a convention of states, which is permitted and prescribed in our Constitution. And that, too, has a high bar. As I recall, that requires 75% of the states to adopt and join, really is what it is, the convention. And that means that state legislatures have to adopt resolutions. What are you seeing? Am I close there?
Yeah, it's 2/3 majority approval in both chambers of Congress, or the alternative that has never been used but is available, 2/3 of the state legislatures ask Congress to do it, in which case Congress must call a national constitutional convention,
okay,
where delegates propose amendments. But then, second step, once it gets out of Congress, it has to be ratified by 3/4 of the states.
That's what I thought. That's the key thing. You can't change the Constitution without 3/4 of the states, whichever path you take, right, to get there.
Correct.
High bar. Doing the math in my head, I believe that's about 38 states.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know how many have joined the convention to this point. And then there's other rules about a convention, just trying to recall.
If you imagine a convention coming together would need 34 states.
Okay.
So
okay.
If you had the appetite in the states to get 34 of them, then you just got to peel off 4 more to ratify it.
Okay. Still incredibly high bar for both. So I don't know how long the Convention of States effort has been going on. And there's some rules around that, as I recall, you can't just go and have a convention and throw everything on the table. It's got to be restricted to very specific. I don't know if there's a limit to the number of issues, but it's you can't just have like a giant, let's get together and do everything we want to do. In this case, the Convention of States organization that's been trying to get this done, there are 2 issues, balanced budget amendment and term limits. And I remember a few years ago, they swept through the state of Mississippi where they were lobbying the state to join the convention. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, from the great state of Texas. He was heavily involved in that. I believe still is. And they found me. They asked me to write a piece. And I did, where I spoke out in favor of a convention and in favor of the state of Mississippi joining on both of those amendments. Was privileged and honored to be at the Capitol and have my photo taken with Colonel West, which was really cool. Fantastic individual, of course. But the state of Mississippi, as I recall, Rhino, only adopted the balanced budget, did not the term limits. I think I got that right, huh? It's what the outcome was. Yeah, Rhino's shaking his head. So it's just a tall order. I mean, it just really is. I don't see it happening. But here's where I'm going with this. We're witnessing a record number of members of Congress quitting. And I looked at a chart showing the 28, 22, and 26 cycles. And the chart shows the number who are announcing retirement from 700 days out to the election all the way to 0. Now, once it gets to about 200, it kind of levels off, right? But 2026 exceeds those prior 2 cycles. One individual who needs to go his butt home is Jim Clyburn from the great state of South Carolina. Remember, he's the one, honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say it, he put Joe Biden in office. You remember that when there was a big field, and he came out when they were headed to South Carolina, which is early on in the primaries, and Clyburn endorsed him. And that cleared the field, I believe, propelled Joe Biden into office. Clyburn is 85. He's been there since 93, the same time Benny Thompson went to Washington. Chuck Grassley, the Republican from Iowa that I've always thought sounds like Mr. Drucker from Petticoat Junction, he's 92. And by the way, he's the 3rd person in line for the presidency. And then there's Representative Hal Rogers from Kentucky. He's 88. We're taking a break. Fox News, SuperTalk News. Caleb Saylor's in the next hour.
You're listening.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
I'm telling you, I watched the Dow cross the unchanged line about 8 times while we were on the break there. You watch that kangaroo is hopping around today, baby, trying to figure out all this dang mess. And the big concern, the big fear, of course, higher oil prices. And once again, the price is set as a global commodity by traders who buy and sell oil futures. It's not set in a silo by the folks who produce the oil and actually by the folks who sell it, much the way agricultural commodities are priced.
Maybe some of the disconnect is coming from looking at short-term and long-term.
Yeah.
The short-term is the war is impacting oil prices, both supply and demand. That really doesn't factor in China getting the majority of their oil from Venezuela and Iran. Because if they can't get their oil from Venezuela and Iran, they have to get their oil from the same place we are, the global supply.
Right.
They're not getting it under the table. So that spikes demand.
That's right.
Supply is down, so it's a perfect storm for higher prices. Now, long term, the fact that China is being siloed from the global supply or having to buy from the global supply instead of getting cheap under-the-table oil, that's going to have a pinch on their economy. So long term, you got to look at it that way. That's a good thing if you're looking at China as being adversarial. But in the short term, the relationship between China and Iran is not really a big deal.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't get a whole lot of oil from Iran directly doesn't play into the fact that now China's having to buy from the same global market we are, meaning it changes the prices for everybody.
Yeah, so to your point there, Iran circumvents the global markets.
Oh, yeah.
And goes straight to China. Sells it at a discount. But it also accounts for about a third of the country's GDP. So when they're not able to move that oil through the strait to get to China at the same level they were prior to the attacks, that has a significant impact on Iran's economy. So
yeah, because their currency is worthless without being propped up by the likes of China.
That's right. So you know what's next is seeing people starve in Iran. And that's and go without the necessities of life, which would just be even more damaging, more harmful, and you can just lay that at the feet of a very selfish, greedy regime who, as you like to say, don't give a rat's rear end about those people. They pretend they do, but that is duplicitous intentionally. They don't. They care about their personal wealth, their personal safety, and their power. Period. End of story. And the people of Iran are just a pawn in their way at the end of the day.
Thankfully, what little reporting you can get from inside Iran, which sadly includes CNN, as much as they've had a hard time with the truth in the last few days with, 5, 6 now mea culpas, but whatever. In the CNN reporting from inside Iran, they almost begrudgingly reported on the fact that it seems like in a lot of the country, life's going on as normal. People are going about their business. Shops are open. It's almost like they didn't want to report on the fact that, the U.S. is targeting the IRGC military.
Right.
We're not bombing out their grocery stores.
Like they do and would and will. Yeah, exactly right. So the president, by the way, is looking at loosening some rules in what's called the Jones Act. And that's some shipping rules that potentially would have the impact of reducing the price of oil. That was reported less than 24 hours ago. And we'll see where that goes, but his team is investigating that to see whether or not.
From what I understand, the only thing they would change would be removing the requirement that a vessel be made in the U.S.
Okay.
It would still have to be crewed by the U.S. It would still have to be owned by a U.S. company.
Okay. Now, some are saying in the industry that this wouldn't have much of an impact on the price of gas. It's hard to tell, honestly. Here at home, by the way,
it might lessen the impact of rising gas prices on goods. Because it's the Jones Act that really makes it to where it's more cost-effective to, say, pick oranges in California, ship them overseas to get processed, and then ship them back.
Right.
The Jones Act is what makes that more cost-effective because it's a nightmare to get it within the U.S. via waterway.
Right, to where those products could be processed for consumption, further
Correct.
consumption. Yeah, exactly right. The old House and Senate down there, following is a list of all the major legislation that the legislature has passed this year. Oh, what the heck are they doing down there? Thank you for that. So the Speaker of the House says we're going to review the Senate pharmacy benefit manager changes. You know what happened? They sent a bill down, did the House, and I know you're shocked at this. The Senate marked it up. I can't believe that. And so, but the Senate did ultimately pass an amended version of HB 1655. That, of course, occurred yesterday. And there were a bit of fireworks in the Mississippi State Senate. 7 senators did not vote in favor of the legislation. One of those, Senator Jeremy England, you know him, he from Jackson County. He did not agree with the amended version of the bill, said that the House's version is really what the pharmacists asked for, and the Senate's version would increase costs to the state through increasing filling fees. That's what he said. Now,
filling or filing?
Filling the prescription. Yeah. Yeah. So he said that this would result in an increase to the state of about $50 million on the state health insurance plan. Said there's between 800,000 and 2 million prescriptions currently covered under the state employee health plan. I don't think that's surprising. And Senator Parks, however, said that leaving the bill as it came over from the House would allow the pharmacy benefit managers to continue to have leverage in the ecosystem. Now, Senator England went to the Legislative Budget Office. This is something that legislators are able to do, who then worked with the Department of Finance Administration to produce what's called a fiscal note. And all that really is a financial analysis and projection of the impact of policy as incorporated in a legislative measure, in a bill. Now, I got to tell you, Rhino, I think we ought to do that for everything over a certain level, whether it's spending or tax reform, revenue changes or tax changes. Now, the minor ones, no. But I don't know what the number ought to be, but some estimate over a certain level. How in the world can you vote on legislation that affects either revenue or spending without knowing what that's going to look like and how that would affect the state's budget? Would you do that in your household? No, I think most people out there are thinking, well, I got this much coming in, I spend this on this and this. If I added that, you know what I'm saying? Well, I know we do in business. I did it every day for 35 years. Why don't we do this as a matter of required practice? Is that unreasonable? So he does it, and then Senator Sparks says, well, that just sounds too high. So, oh, man, I don't know what to think. But this thing ultimately did pass. Senator Sparks said, I just want to make sure your fiscal note was not prepared by the PBMs themselves. He said he was concerned about the estimates being a little out of line. Man, oh, man. So now it heads back down to the House. In the meantime, the pharmacists are sitting on pins and needles waiting to see what happens. Time for a break in the Element Wealth studio. It's Caleb Sailors with SuperTalk Mississippi News next.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Rocking out now, baby. We are back in the Element Wealth studio. We welcome now Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Go back to the rock music, Rhino. That was better.
Man. That was awesome. Some headbanging stuff there, wasn't it?
That was Toto.
Was it Toto?
That's Toto.
It's Toto.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I'm a big Toto fan. What song was that?
Gypsy Train.
I'm familiar with the song. Not one of my favorites. Don't listen to it a lot. But what a talented group.
Toto's also coming to Brandon this year.
That's right.
Brandon Amphitheater.
They are.
I hope to see you there, Gerard.
Yeah,
I've already gotten tickets. I will be there. So,
yeah. Looking forward to that.
Not going to miss that opportunity.
Oh, they're awesome. Yeah. All right.
And Christopher Cross, too. He'll be there. So, star-studded lineup.
I remember him from the college days when he released his first Ride Like the Wind.
Yeah, Ride Like the Wind and Sailing.
Yeah. Sailing, that was his first one. Yep. That put him on the map.
Yeah.
He was just a baby, literally.
Yeah.
I remember him at the Grammys. It's like, this dude's 12. That's what he kind of looked like. All right, give us a rundown. First, we had election week, so that's the big story, right?
Yep, that's the big story. Right now, the biggest storyline from the elections, from the primaries that took place Tuesday, is we don't have a declared winner in the Republican primary in Mississippi's 2nd Congressional District. Of course, that would be who's going to run against Benny Thompson, longtime congressman who's represented the Democratic Party in Mississippi for quite some time. Is seeking an 18th term, to be exact. But Ron Eller and Kevin Wilson were the two battling it out in the Republican primary, and we don't have a declared winner, but Eller has already said, hey, we won. We won.
Sending out communications, mass communications.
Sent out press releases saying that they've won. He's already said, all right, all of you that voted for my opponent, for Kevin Wilson, y'all, we're a party of unity. We're sending a unified message. Y'all vote for me when November rolls around. Meanwhile, we reached out to Kevin Wilson's camp, and they have not conceded. So the AP has not called this race yet. Eller does have a small lead, and they're counting absentee ballots. And, I mean, the path definitely looks clearer for Ron Eller right now. Obviously, he does have the lead, and he's taking the victory lap. But the Kevin Wilson camp said that, no, they won't be making any announcements, won't be conceding until all votes are counted. So that's where we are there. But, you know, we did have a big night Tuesday, and it proved fruitful for incumbents. I'll stay with the 2nd Congressional District. Congressman Benny Thompson was challenged. He had multiple challengers, most notably Evan Turnage, who's a Yale-educated lawyer who's worked with some of the most prominent Democrats in D.C., like Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, etc. He seemed to be kind of a viable challenge for Congressman Thompson in the midterms, but that didn't really play out on Tuesday night. Benny Thompson got 86% of the vote, won in a landslide. And if Ron Eller does end up winning, this will be the 3rd straight time these two have faced off against one another in the general election. Of course, Eller hasn't come close in any of them. I think, you know, Congressman Thompson's kind of got that. I'm not saying it's over. I'm not saying that at all. Nothing's over until it's over. But he's had that seat locked up for quite some time, and it appears he's going to have it until he retires.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at the turnout on the Democratic primary side versus the Republican, like 3x virtually from in terms of the Democrats outpacing the Republicans. So if that were to stay true in the general, Benny Thompson's back in the Congress.
So, right now, I'm looking at the numbers right now. We've got a little north of 24,000 votes combined between Eller and Wilson.
In the Republican
primary.
Yep.
Benny Thompson doubled that by himself. On the Democratic side, doubled it by himself.
And he's just one of 3 candidates, right?
Right. Yes, just one of 3.
In the Democratic
It was
primary.
Evan Turnage and Purtis Williams, but Purtis Williams didn't even get 1,000 votes. And Evan Turnage got, close to 9,000. He would have been a viable challenger in the Republican primary if he were up with those numbers, but it wasn't it paled in comparison to what Congressman Thompson did. In our 1st Congressional District, Trent Kelly was unopposed on the Republican side. He'll face off against Cliff Johnson, Democratic prominent attorney in Mississippi, civil rights lawyer, and Johnny Balcom, a libertarian running for that seat. In the 3rd Congressional District, both candidates on both party lines were unopposed. We had the battle for the Michaels. Michael Guest, who, of course, was on the program a couple days ago, and then Michael Chiaradio, a former Major League Baseball player. They'll battle it out in November. The 4th Congressional District, Mike Ezell won the Republican primary. He'll take on State Representative Jeffrey Hullum and Independent Carl Boynton. And then we've got a big race in the Senate.
Who's run before as a Republican, by the way? Boynton has.
Yeah, Boynton. He's run for a bunch of different things in multiple different parties. But then in the Senate side, big election here, and it looks like the Democrats do have some momentum going into this. Scott Colomb ran a good race and got a lot of votes on Tuesday night. His camp seems pretty excited. They're sending out, like you said, mass communication saying, hey, we've got momentum right now. And the National Democratic Party is behind him pretty heavily as well, trying to unseat incumbent Republican Cindy Hyde-Smith. Sarah Adalaka was the challenger to Cindy Hyde-Smith in the Republican primary, and she really didn't put up much of a fight at all on election night. That race was called in right at 30 minutes.
Didn't take long.
No, didn't take long at all. So, but that's shaping up to be a pretty, contentious election going down to November. Those two, both of them have a lot of support, a lot of built-in support within the party lines, and so now it's seeing who can have the most crossover appeal between those two. So some interesting storylines to track as we head to the November general. And so now, like Congressman Michael Guest said on Wednesday, now the campaigning really starts. We got through the primaries. Now we really, our radio waves, our TV waves, our internet waves, and every time we go on social media is about to be flooded with campaign ads. So y'all, buckle up, Mississippi.
Yeah. So just looking at the race, only 10,000 votes in the Senate race separate the Democrats from Republicans.
Right.
10,000 votes fewer than Republicans, total votes cast. that's a bit of a harbinger for the general, but it's pretty close, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's showing you that this isn't one of those, the Republicans just going to win. I mean, there's Sidney Hyde-Smith's going to have to campaign in Mississippi.
I believe she knows that. I believe her camp knows that.
She's going to have to put boots on the ground and go talk to Mississippians and knows this isn't just her being shooed in like, Congressman Benny Thompson's been for several years, like Michael Guest has been the last couple of cycles, although he was challenged in the primaries pretty well a couple of cycles ago. But still, it's not one of those where it looks like the incumbent's just a shoe-in. Not at all.
And then, unfortunately, it appears the final numbers of about 302,000 cast ballots.
Yeah.
We're looking at the Senate race. Mm-hmm. Now, there certainly could be some that voted for the House candidates and elected to not vote. Mm-hmm. Not likely, though, to be material in the terms of the number. But that represents 17% of the total registered voters. Really poor turnout.
And Secretary of State Michael Watson warned us that it's not a gubernatorial election, not a presidential election, and sometimes it's hard to get people to come out and vote. Now, look, I will give our news team here at SuperTalk News credit. We have been telling people, go vote, go vote, go vote, go vote. I mean, we've been election nonstop these past 3-4 weeks. That's all we've been talking about. That's what you've been talking about on your show. That's what we've been trying to do. But what's the old adage, Gerard? You can lead a horse to the water. You can't make it drink. And I drove by multiple polling precincts on Tuesday, one of them being my own because I voted. But the lines were minimal. There were hardly anybody there. And, we can tell people to go vote, but it's up to them. It's incumbent on them to actually do it.
All right. Tell us about the teacher pay raises real quick.
So the House and Senate have now gone back to the drawing board and done something they could have done before deadline, but they've revived unrelated bills to pass teacher pay raise. The House's is $5,000 immediately. The Senate's is $6,000 phased in over 3 years with some bonuses for assistants and, raises for assistant teachers and bonuses for special education teachers. It's kind of where we stand there. It looks like this will probably go to conference and they'll iron out an actual teacher pay raise bill in conference.
I know you've been tracking this diligently, and that is the saga of Trinidad Chambliss and the NCAA. Give us a quick update.
So the NCAA went to the state Supreme Court last week to try to have them kind of supersede Judge Robert Whitwell's ruling and giving Trinidad an injunctive relief, allowing him to play this season against the NCAA's wishes. Well, that ruffled some feathers because Trinidad Chambliss's legal team punched back and is now saying, hey, our client's entitled to punitive damages. He was supposed to be the cover, or was in the running to be the cover athlete of college football video game coming up, was going to get probably millions in NIL deals because of it. But because of his status being up in the air, the company EA Sports backed out. And so, Trinidad Chambliss's attorneys are saying, our client may be entitled to some money from the NCAA.
Unbelievable. What a deal. All right. Appreciate it, Caleb. Thanks for coming in as always.
Thanks, Gerard.
Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. Coming right back, half an hour in hour 2 of Middays. Then we've got Scott Waller and Dr. Angela Sheils coming in the Element Well studio. Stay with us.
From the Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So
we haven't even touched on the Cuban announcement.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
So they announced 3.5 hours ago now?
Yep.
Maybe 4 now. that there are negotiations between Cuba and the United States to initiate a democratic process for the end of the Cuban regime.
Appreciate you passing that on. I wasn't aware of that. Didn't see the announcement. I'm sort of surprised the markets didn't show some sort of positive reaction. I just think right now the algorithms are all focused on oil. You know that. But this would be good news if that could happen. And I've been kind of wondering, what's the status of life inside Cuba? Because it was, 6 weeks, 2 months ago when you saw photos that were leaking and going out on the internet showing cars just stalled in the street. The 1950s and 60s cars, right? Stalled in the street. Food shortages. Access to health care, not available. Lots of other problems as well. All kinds of problems with their energy.
Yeah, massive power outages lasting hours and days.
Yeah. So it gets to a point where our society globally is not built around surviving that. We're not built around not having electricity, not having gas to put in a car, and not having access to modern health care, and going to the grocery store and buying food. We've since transitioned away from that more self-sufficient lifestyle for the better. I mean, we've become a wealthier, healthier people, humans in general, because of that. But when that breaks down, it's not good. We were talking offline about the grip on power, honestly, that my generation seems to have politically. Looking at Senator Chuck Grassley, and he's outside of my generation. He's 92. He's been there since 1980. 1980. Served in the United States Senate. That's just mind-boggling. And I'm not unhappy necessarily with Senator Grassley. It's just, I feel like it's time to rotate the crops. And I will admit, how can you not, Rhino, be concerned, and God help us and forbid that ever this becomes necessary. But the fact that he stirred in line to succeed the president in the number of circumstances that our Constitution indicates would require a succession is scary. It's him, it's the vice president, of course, the Speaker of the House, and then the president pro tem, and that's what he is in the U.S. Senate. That's just scary, in my view. So, time to rotate the crops. I guess the good news is many members are saying, yeah, I'm out of here. And so we're having record retirements. Not just old people, but some that haven't been there terribly long, that are in the prime ages, are saying they're out of here. So, back to this PBM reform bill. I know this is a big deal, and we had an individual on the program earlier this week that owns as an operator, as a registered pharmacist, owns a pharmacy in the state of Mississippi, and came in to talk about the problems that PBMs cause independent pharmacists in the state. This is something that they've been pushing for in Mississippi for a while. This didn't just crop up. And by the way, this is a nationwide issue. Pharmacy benefit managers, they're the so-called middlemen that sit between, really, if you look at, as I've talked about before, a graphic of a chart showing all the relationships and the flow from the manufacturer of a medicine down to the ultimate patient consumer. There's a bunch of steps in between that, to say the least, and it'll hurt your head looking at the chart. But the pharmacy benefit managers in general, there are, I believe, now, Rhino, 3 in the country now that are part of, at the higher level, the health insurance companies themselves, and they manage the pharmaceutical aspect of insurance coverage. It's brutally complicated, a little different and separate. Because
there's a big 3.
Okay, that's right.
They control,
there's some smaller
like
ones.
80, 85%.
You're right. Just like there's some 90 health insurance companies in this country, but the top 5 have 85% of the commercial market. Similar to, well, that's not unusual almost in any industry, right? It's the old 80-20 rule sort of deal. And so they sit between the big insurance companies, the manufacturers of the drugs, and then the pharmacists and the pharmacy retailers. Sometimes this is the complaint. In some situations, that's all one company. Not necessarily the manufacturer of the medicine, the pharmaceutical, but the top-line insurer. That's who we pay our premiums to, and we expect to be reimbursed for our purchases of drugs, and the pharmacy benefit managers manage all of that ecosystem on behalf of the top-line insurance companies. And as we just said, the top 3 are all actually subsidiaries and part of the mother company, if you will, at the top. So, and they're also accused often of steering, is what it's called, the practice, steering patients to the retail pharmacies that are also owned by the same organization. CVS is an example that often gets referred to. That's part of the Aetna umbrella. So they will often steer a patient to the pharmacy that's also part of their conglomerate company. And that can often cut out the independent pharmacists, called steering. And there's all kinds of other practices. But the bottom line is, according to the debate yesterday in the state Senate, it appears that the pharmacists, according to the Senate, some in the Senate, said they were willing to concede this steering practice in exchange for higher filling fees. That's what the independent pharmacists said based on what Senator Rita Parks stated. The House, however, didn't have the higher filling fees in their version, but did have a prohibition of steering. So that's what caused the controversy. And then 7 senators ended up not voting for the legislation. 7 of the Mississippi State senators. And we're trying to get 1 or 2 of those on to explain their vote. But Senator Jeremy England, who we just referenced, said that he was a no vote because he thought it would cost the state a lot of money in its self-funded insurance plan. Senator Chad McMahon, another one. Senator Walter Michel. So hopefully we can get somebody on to talk about that. In the state of Illinois, you know what their solution is to the so-called housing affordability crisis? What they want to do? Oh, boy. Create a new program. I know you're shocked at that. That's government's solution to everything. We need a new program. $15,000 is what they want to do to first-time home buyers to cover down payments and closing costs. It would expand the state of Illinois' Housing Development Authority's mortgage options. Okay, let's fix it. Just give buyers $15,000. Now, what do you think that will do to the price of houses? Isn't that what we always say? It's no different than the prop-ups in higher education. What happened to tuition? It's health care. Don't we ever learn from these practices? Apparently not. The best way to drive the price of housing down is to put in place policies that boost supply. And I don't mean just of the house itself. I mean all the inputs. It's called supply-side economics. It's what the Democrats like to refer to wrongly as trickle-down economics. That's horse hockey. There is no such thing. There is a such thing as supply-side. It means, hey, you know what? If you make it easier to do business, more profitable, more opportunistic, you get more of it. And when you get more of it, the price goes down. Least starts to approach the level of demand. And right now we have an imbalance on that. We're stepping aside for a break, coming back in the Element Wealth studio.
Up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, with respect to the PBM legislation, and honestly, Rhino, we don't have too many to talk about. That's one of the few. But that's a very controversial issue, of course, and I suspect that they'll go to conference and hammer out a compromise. And the same is probably true of the teacher pay raise, because the Senate did not pass the House teacher pay raise bill. Rather, they gutted a House bill just like the House gutted a Senate bill and inserted their own plan for teacher pay raises. The lieutenant governor taking to social media to announce that. I'm sure it was announced elsewhere as well. He had numerous interviews with the media, but across the spectrum of media outlets. Here's what he said on social media. Today, the Mississippi Senate has amended House Bill 1395 to provide a $6,000 teacher pay raise, a $9,000 special education teacher pay raise, and a $2,000 pay raise for assistant teachers, community college instructors, and university professors. A teacher pay raise has been a priority of the Senate since day one of this legislative session. The educators who are shaping the future of our state are invaluable, and supporting their work is key. I definitely agree that teachers are critical components of the public sector and the services they provide to the state of Mississippi. No doubt about that. I will, however, point this out. First, I didn't see a fiscal note attached to this. I'm curious as to how much this costs. In general, a $1,000 teacher pay raise equates to about $50 million a year. So you can do the math there. This $6,000 raise, which, by the way, is phased in $2,000 a year over 3 years, a little different than the House's bill, which would have pushed the $5,000 raise in there immediately. So that is $300 million a year. And then I don't know how much additional the $3,000 uplift enhancement for special education teachers would cost. $2,000 for assistant teachers. I want to say that's $20-30 million. And then don't know about community college and university professors. My guess is this whole tab comes in around $400 million a year. By the way, that's equal to the surplus the state is generating this year. And that's with the income tax still intact at 4%, while it begins to phase out even more next year. One would have to think that less revenue would come from income taxes. The question is, will more income be received from sales taxes, which comprise about 39% of total general fund revenues, and income taxes come in at, I think, just under 25%. Sales taxes account for more than individual income taxes in the state's general fund. I just would like to see a fiscal note. I think it's reasonable when you're considering legislation with such big dollar amounts. And maybe there is one, and maybe this has been shared with members of the legislature. I don't see an attachment, which it would be, as you know, Rhino, to the measure as published officially by the Mississippi legislature. Have you heard any member of the legislature actually ask, how much is this going to cost? Seems like you'd be curious about that. And maybe they are, and I'm just not aware. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt here. I just believe this should be a requirement, though. And it doesn't seem to be. It's not a hard math exercise, honestly, but I think quite necessary. The other thing I would say is, as far as the comment from the lieutenant governor shaping the future of our state, if those students don't stay in the state, what they're shaping the future of is the other states where the students end up, right? Because about the only metric we have on them as students are those crazy tests that they all take. That's the metric. That's the benchmark. The true benchmark long term is, A, do they stay here, and B, do they contribute to society? Are they productive, successful, professionally and personally adults? That's the purpose of the education. It's not to score good on the tests. That's just like a temporary holding place metric. It's like, well, yeah, that degree maybe got you an interview, but it don't get you the job. And it also certainly, if you get the job, that doesn't keep the job. It's your performance. It's your value proposition. It's your contribution. At least that's the way it should be. There's some in this country that think in the name of equity, you should just be given a job and given a certain amount of pay. And if that ain't enough, well, we'll just go take some from the more successful people in society, which we got to get to today is something that some Democrats in this country are wanting to do in some states and even at the federal level. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio with Scott Waller and Ashley Sheils. Stay with us.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Scott Waller, Executive Vice President of the Mississippi Business Alliance, also President of the Mississippi Business Alliance Foundation, and Dr. Ashley Sheils, CEO of Children's Foundation of Mississippi. Scott, Dr. Sheils, thanks for coming in.
Oh, great to be here.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, give us a rundown there, Scott. You guys are talking about the access to child care in the state of Mississippi. This is what it's all about. And not only is that a challenge for working families, and I think a lot of, in particular, even couples these days, both of the spouses, both of the parents work. They need a place for their child to be taken care of while they're off and away at work. That, however, is expensive.
It is very expensive. And in fact, we have been looking at this for the last few years. Back in 2020, there was a report released that we worked on along with the Children's Foundation of Mississippi by the U.S. Chamber called Untapped Potential. And it kind of was what started really delving into the issue of child care as it relates to workforce and getting people into the workforce or getting people into workforce training and educational training. So I think that was part of what led to looking at this, and over the last few years, we continue to hear from our members, our business leaders across the state, that this is an issue, and it's something that we need to be thinking about. It's not the training issue, it's not some of the other availability issues, but at the end of the day, it's one of the ancillary issues of workforce that really makes a big difference for having what we need in workforce development and the workforce we need in Mississippi. So back toward the end of last year, we started working on this report in partnership with a grant that we'd received from the Children's Foundation of Mississippi. And really the idea was to get employer input to help us figure out the best way to increase employer engagement, get them more involved in the process and provide ways to help them be part of that. So that's kind of what the history of this and what this report's all about.
So, Dr. Sheils, I would submit that not only is there an economic component to this, of course, but, the peace of mind is a big thing. And when you don't have peace of mind and you're attempting to work and do your job, you don't perform as well as you do when you have some comfort and confidence in that your child is properly cared for.
That's right. That's right. And, there's a lot of research and data out there that says when kids are in high quality early childhood education environment, so strong child care, they do have stronger cognitive and academic performance later in their life. They do have better health outcomes. So not only is there that peace of mind for parents while they're working in their jobs in the moment, but the future ramifications of having a really strong start for their children to continue to be on a successful path for their future.
Yeah. Okay, so Scott, it's one thing for employers and maybe access to funds through other programs for child care, but then there's the supply is also an issue.
That's a big part of it. And I think access is the biggest thing. And I agree with what Ashley just said. It's quality child care. I've always said quality child care with a strong educational component because it's about building having the ability for someone to go to one of these programs, learn, and be prepared to enter school. It's almost twofold. There's two elements. There's one, that part of it's important for the child, but it's also important for the parent because if they know, to your point, you made just a minute ago, if there's somewhere their child's going where they're comfortable, they know the child's going to be cared for, the child's going to learn, that frees them up to really be in the workplace and do the things they need to be doing as a productive in a productive environment. So those are the things that we feel like have led to us doing the work that we're doing now, looking at what is the impact and what are some things that might be ahead for businesses to take advantage of.
What are you hearing from employers, Dr. Sheils? Are they telling you, this is an issue, it's impeding our ability to recruit, to maintain members of their workforce?
Absolutely. So I'll let Scott too talk about the employer side, but from the child care centers, we've been hearing how important it is for families that are moving to their area to have seats for their children, so that they can be, when there's economic growth and boom and new things happening and new businesses coming to town, but there's fewer child care seats, we kind of have, an unmatched situation where do they send their children? Again, this idea of commuting to another town where there's child care seats. So one of the things the Children's Foundation has been doing through our partnerships with the Federal Preschool Development Grant through the Department of Human Services, Department of Education, is looking at the Child Care Access Tracking System. We call it CATS, but really thinking about where are their seats and does that match the need in terms of how many additional seats to serve the children that are being born daily and people that are moving to the area for business.
And then the other thing, of course, Scott, is how many people of childbearing age are saying, I'm not going to start a family because of the cost associated with this or access and just the other challenges associated with I've got to keep working for subsistence, but taking care of my child while I'm working is a big problem. And so we're not creating more workers.
And that's one of the issues, and we didn't really delve into that side of it, but I think it's probably in the thoughts of people's mind. Am I going to have the ability to have a place for my child to stay? And, you hear these stories about the minute that you're expecting, you get your name on every list you can so that you can find a spot. I mean, you hear all that out there. Without question, that's part of it. But I think that the important thing for us is looking at, as businesses now understand this, and then COVID kind of really brought this to the forefront, and since then we've really seen a lot more, focus on this issue, but making sure that they can take care of their employees. I mean, I think most businesses try to provide things that they can,
sure.
and they see the benefit of it. In fact, one of the things that stood out to me in the study was if you look at it, 56% of those that responded that do offer some type of child care say that it helps with retention, it helps with productivity, it really creates that kind of ability to have a loyal employee. And then another 23% added that it really the biggest thing they saw is decreased absenteeism.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at that, 79% that responded saying, hey, we get a return on this investment. Where we really think that our biggest opportunity is to have some have some things that will encourage more businesses to participate, because there's a couple of tax incentives that's geared toward child care now. They're not really utilized that much, and one of the reasons we found out in the survey is they probably need to be adjusted. The threshold may be a little bit too high, particularly on the current business child care tax credit, and the process of really taking advantage of it can be very cumbersome. So we want to simplify that. So there's actually two pieces of legislation going through that will lower that cap or lower that minimum threshold from $6,000 where it is today down to $2,000. And so we think there's some opportunities ahead to get that in place, simplify the ability to just, this apply for it like you would do any other tax credit or benefit that you would do when you're filing your taxes. Don't make it a cumbersome process. If we do those two things, I think that gives us the opportunity. But from our perspective, it's the opportunity to make sure that businesses understand this is an easy way to help. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I don't know if we can afford it. I think our job is to show just what this 79% that do provide it are saying. You really can't afford not to. I mean, it will actually benefit you. The return on your investment will be much greater over time by, again, reduced absenteeism, higher productivity, greater loyalty for retention. All of those things do make a difference.
So the report indicates, Dr. Sheils, 8% of businesses that participated in the survey offer some sort of child care services. That is probably an increase from, say, 10 years ago, I would imagine. But still, that's only 8%.
That's right. So a lot of work ahead of us in terms of getting businesses aware of the benefits and the opportunity. And to Scott's point, the things that they're looking for sometimes don't necessarily automatically childcare isn't what pops into their mind, right? Because they're very business focused. But the idea that this investment not only benefits that employee and their employee's family, but the idea that it's also going to benefit their productivity and their attendance at work, it's a win-win, right, for families and for businesses. So I think that 8% is showing that, we have our work cut out for us.
So I think, Scott, we have to be honest, this is a lot more achievable and practical for larger organizations due to the plain old economies of scale than small businesses. Is there some solution to that, perhaps? Maybe combining and joining together?
Well, I think we want to look at every possibility. But to go back real quick, I just want to say, let's keep this positive.
Yeah.
If we lower that business tax credit, there's 23% that said, we may be willing to take a look at that. So we think we have some options to get more people participating as we go forward. So, but at the end of the day, we still have the issue of making sure that parents are comfortable and that they can be in the workforce.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate it. Sounds like a great program you guys got going on, and I'm glad to see the Mississippi Business Alliance is integrally involved in that as well. Thank you guys for coming on. Scott
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much.
And Dr. Ashley Sheils, appreciate you coming on.
So
thanks a lot.
You.
Yep.
Just hearing the word IRA.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. By the way, this report we were just discussing, you can access that at MSBA.com/foundation. MSBA.com/foundation. Mississippi employers identify child care access as major workforce challenges. It's no doubt. It is a challenge, and having worked as well as my spouse and raising children, anybody who's been through this knows that this is certainly something you have to grapple with as part of raising children. And I think nowadays it's more common for both spouses to work. And then don't forget about the fact that we have lots of single parents that need help as well. So when the employer can step in and try to assist with the child care, which has become a benefit, as you know, Rhino, in corporate America in particular, it's become a benefit upon which they compete for scarce talent. Whenever some sort of child care access is available at the workplace through an employer, that's become a more popular benefit, shall we say. But it's a lot more difficult to pull off when you're a small employer. And so that's what this is about, is trying to provide some sort of financial cover for that to increase the availability of child care so we get more people in the workforce. Good deal. The Dow now down again, by the way, up, down. Watching it today. On the C Spire text line, I have CVS as my provider. If I choose to get my meds through my local pharmacy where I have a personal relationship, I pay about 80% more than using CVS. Yeah, that's one of the things that these reforms are attempting to address, is that the reimbursement would be level, whether it's the CVS pharmacy itself, when the CVS PBM is involved, or when equal to the independent pharmacy. So it would level the reimbursement level there so that the patient cost would be the same, indifferent to the supplier. The big problem I think we have in the state of Mississippi is we have so many just rural areas where we don't have the big name, household name retail pharmacies. And folks rely on the independent pharmacies and the relationships that they have with those independent pharmacists. But the present environment makes it difficult for the independent pharmacist not only to compete, but just to remain viable. And as you know, Rhino, buying drugs and the retail price of drugs, that's about as dang confusing as buying airplane tickets. You know what I mean? You can go online 1 minute to look up the price of a ticket, and 2 minutes later when you refresh it, it goes up or down, which is all kind of dynamic pricing, if you will. It's not static, and it's based on supply and demand. The pharmacy industry, from a retail perspective, is different than that because you got a third party, actually 2 third parties involved sometimes. And then you got Medicare and Medicaid, so it's not like you're just marketing to the actual end user who's paying the full tab, because generally speaking, they're not. They're paying a copay or a deductible, some out-of-pocket expense, and the insurers covering the rest, and it just makes it super dang complicated, is the bottom line. So that's what some of these reforms are designed, at least, to address. Also on the C Spire text line, Mike in Gulfport says, Cuba is a developer dream. Rhino just sent me a video and was telling us earlier about how it looks like maybe that whole place is about to turn the corner big time, which would be, I think, a benefit to the world.
To
honestly.
the point where I saw a report that Cuba is allowing FBI agents into the country to investigate the shooting of the U.S.-based crew. I believe it was a week or 2 ago.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be good, honestly, for stability to be achieved in Cuba and to rid that small island country to our southeast as well, right, of the menace they are to the planet, have been for a long time. Price Wallace, the representative, asks, why aren't we controlling the strait? Best I could tell, Representative Wallace, listening to Secretary Hegseth this morning, that's the plan, that's the objective. But I don't think he's going to divulge all the strategic challenges to that. But apparently there are, and I do trust our military with its. And he talked this morning, something we've said on the program about how they're leveraging all the latest technology tools available, all AI powered, all coming from the cloud data centers. But he talked about how they absolutely have every powerful tool at their disposal being leveraged in this conflict. And I tell you who's paying attention to that, and you know this, that's China and Russia, because they don't have an equal to it. They simply don't have an equal to it. Problem is, if we rest on our laurels, they will catch up. And then they have the strategic advantage, because strategic advantage these days is not gained from just the firepower itself. It's the information. And the information that's driven by and produced by all this incredible technology. And he talked about that. So best I could tell, Price, is that they're trying to figure out how can we secure these waters so that we can pass. And something's got them concerned. I don't know exactly what that is. Like I said, he ain't going to tell us, and we don't want him to tell us because that means the enemy would find out. But I do think that that's the last vestige they have. It's not inside the country. They got virtually nothing left from a military perspective. And they don't have a whole lot of military assets remaining in terms of ships and boats. But they apparently have still some tricks up their sleeve they can utilize in those waters. That's why if you guys look at...
The reporting on the dangers have been varied. I mean...
That's right.
There were 3 ships that tried to transit the strait that were attacked in the last 48 to 72 hours, and there's no confirmation on what was used for the attack.
Okay.
Some reports were missile attacks, some reports were mortar attacks, and other reports were drone attacks. So far, I haven't seen any reports on mining being a problem, although that has been reported that Iran has between 2,000 and 6,000 marine mines.
Yep.
The issue with the statements on downing their entire Navy, it wouldn't require any specific Navy vessels to lay mines because they could just use fishing boats, 1 or 2 at a time. But also that strait is under 24/7 surveillance by the military, so it would likely be difficult for them to mine the strait. That being said, you still got those other 3 issues that have been reported on: missiles, mortars, and drones. So until they can target enough of the either launch sites or manufacturing sites for missiles, mortars, and drones, there's still a danger.
And has it not been reported that some of their drones have been able to get through our drone defenses, that maybe they found some sort of hole there that allowed them being their drones, to attack our assets?
It's not as much that they were able to get through the defenses through some sort of ingenuity. It was just a matter of, from my understanding, it was a matter of sheer numbers.
Okay. All right.
And
just overwhelming.
Because they have not been able to have nearly as many launches as they were able to in the early stages of the war, that danger is minimized.
Okay. Gotcha. Well,
because the way the systems work that are trying to intercept anything coming in, whether that be a ballistic missile, a cruise missile, a drone, whatever, it identifies it, locks on, it calculates where it's predicted to go.
Okay.
But with drones, it's different than a ballistic missile where you can pretty much tell the trajectory based on math because the drone can be piloted.
Makes sense.
There are other measures, countermeasures with electronic warfare, with signal jamming, with all kind of stuff that are also used. But generally, during that calculation of where it's headed, there's a bit of triage made where if it's not going to hit something critical, they'll let it through. They'll let it squirt through instead of wasting whatever resource it would be to take it out.
Okay. Makes sense. Well, on the C Spire text line, if the U.S. has crippled the Iranian Navy, how can the how can that influence the shipment of oil? And like we're saying here, it's not just the Navy that has the ability to cause problems in the Strait. I got to trust our military. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is middays from the Element Wealth studio. So on the C Spire text line, this is a very commonly asked question. Can you explain how fuel prices go up instantly at the pump when oil prices rise but take forever to go down when the oil price retreats? Fertilizer prices are the same way. Just seems like price gouging. It's definitely not price gouging. The short answer is because it can. That's the actual short answer. We keep buying it, and they raise the price. And often it's because they know that when the price does go up as far as what they bring in as inventory, that they can't raise the price at that point to offset that significant increase. So what they try to do is pad a little profit now by raising the price, anticipating the increased cost of the input from the gas distributors, which are, of course, buying it from the refineries. It's just being passed on that way. They try to get ahead of that. We're going to make a little money now while we can because the next load comes in is going to be so high, we're not going to be able to raise the price to that level. Because folks won't buy it.
You come back to elastic versus inelastic goods.
That's exactly what it is.
All that kind of stuff.
100%. It's a combination of that. And then there's the other issues, Ryan, the timing of it. We were just talking, Scott was sharing offline, that he passed by a gas station when he was going down to the Capitol this morning, and it was like $2.98. When he passed by on the way up to the studio, it was $3.19. But likely because they just received a new shipment in at a higher price. So you got the timing difference there, but the big part that I know is kind of hard to wrap your head around is they do go out and raise in advance to try to pad a little profit, knowing that when the cost of the downstream shipments arrives and they take that into inventory, they are not able to raise prices commensurately. It's definitely not price gouging because they charge whatever they want. You don't have to buy it. Price gouging would come into play where you don't have but one choice, maybe two, and it's because there's an emergency that has eliminated the retail supply of whatever the good and service is. And it's a direct result of that natural disaster type emergency. And they take advantage of the fact, if you could call it that. Now, some free marketers would say that's not taking advantage. That's just the market. There's a shortage and there's excess demand. Boom, price goes up. But we actually do we not, some laws in this. I think it's at the state level, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there are any federal laws that govern and define price gouging, and there's some penalties associated with that. But that's when folks are being so-called taken advantage of during usually a natural disaster type emergency. This is all just based on plain old demand and supply. So right now, you're not seeing any gas stations shut down yet, knock on wood. We're not seeing any of that plastic on the nozzles at the pumps. The supply still in this country seems to be sufficiently available. But, yeah, they're raising prices to make a little money while they can. The profit on retail gas isn't significant. despite what Joe Biden thinks. That's not where they make their money. And it's honestly why through the decades we've seen a transition away from pure gas stations that only sold gas and oil and maybe had a little car repair shop, sold tires and the like, and had a couple of vending machines with soft drinks and snacks. Now, of course, the whole concept of convenience stores, as we call them, C-stores, those have sprouted out up across the landscape over the last 50 years because it got to the point where we can't make enough money to stay in business just selling gas and oil and 10-cent drinks out of the machine.
And now the latest trend has been to do away with the personnel and go back to basically a convenience store full of vending machines.
That's exactly right. It's totally right.
Whether it literally be a building full of vending machines or in some of the more advanced locations, you walk in and it uses AI to track, all right, he went to this, pulled this off the shelf, and then you go to the counter and it's already got a tallied up total. You swipe your card and go.
That's also happening in other states which have implemented these very onerous minimum wage laws. We've seen that happening in California in particular. They were the first that implemented passed law requiring a certain wage to be paid to fast food workers. Remember that? It was literally applied specifically to them, and so all the fast food sellers said, okay, we're going to automate the heck out of these restaurants to where we don't have any people. Meantime, I believe up there in New York, they're looking at a $30 minimum wage.
Yeah, the fast food workers in California, it's $20 an hour.
Okay, $20 an hour. That's $40,000 a year, roughly.
For any employee of a fast food chain with more than, say, 50 or 60 locations nationwide.
That's right. It only applied to the larger ones. You're exactly right.
Because that was one of the notions thrown around as to whether or not they could be sued over the constitutionality because they're basing state wages on a company's nationwide output.
Which is crazy. Agree. So New York, though, considering $30. Now, something that does bug the heck out of me, and I don't know how accurate they are. A lot of people have zero faith in polls, and I respect that. I'm not in that camp. I'm not in the 100% I buy them either camp. Polls on Zoran Mamdani, the communist mayor of New York, a very high favorability rating. The most of any politician, any elected official in the state of New York. I just don't get it. I really don't. He, of course, wanting to implement significant taxes on billionaires and millionaires in the state of Washington, which presently has no income tax. One of the 10 states just passed. The Washington State Senate did a controversial proposal known as the millionaire's tax. The House debated it, by the way, for 24 hours. Passed on a vote of 27 to 21. They concurred. A 9.9% tax on annual income over $1 million. That's why you got the likes of Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, saying enough. He's headed to Florida, where there is no state income tax. However, as you pointed out, the company remains headquartered there, though they are moving a big piece of have you seen this, of the headquarters to Nashville, also a state with no state income tax. The state of Washington's got some huge, very successful companies, Starbucks being one of them, Microsoft another one, Amazon another one, and they're all looking to get away from the nuttiness of Washington's tax and regulatory policies. They've got this goofy head tax in Seattle and all that kind of crazy stuff. By the way, I saw that Schultz, to the loon lefties that don't understand how folks that do achieve wealth actually help other people, he and his wife, they're buying a $40 million residence. You think some people were involved in the selling and construction of that residence, made a little money off of it? I think so. Imagine furnishing a $40 million residence. Imagine the property taxes he's going to pay on a $40 million residence. And guess what those fund? Schools, where they're always crying for more money. Is it just a second order thinking that they just can't comprehend, I guess? Unbelievable. More power to him. I love it because Schultz talks about growing up in tenement housing in New York. And he had this idea. He was traveling somewhere, Italy, I think, and back in the 70s, 60s. And that's where he got the idea for coffee shops. I think he encountered them while in Europe on business. Came up with the idea, came out of his head, and he creates this massively valuable company, and he personally made a bunch of money at it. And believe it or not, if you've ever watched him or heard him, he's not a nutcase like a lot of people may think he is, because the company kind of has that reputation, and he's in Washington. And one of the reasons you know that's because he's getting the hell out of there and going to Florida. He thinks it's wrong. He thinks it's crazy to tax people like him at that level. It's not like he hasn't hired millions of people, my gosh, and built stores all over the world that made a lot of people a lot of money. But I know that's second order thinking. Final segment on the other side.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
All right, on today's episode, I should say, of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear from singer-songwriter Paula Boggs. You can listen to In the Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi. And then middays, we're going to be at the Westin in downtown Jackson next Wednesday. We'll be there for the Madison County Business League and Foundation, along with Precon Global Investment Group's annual luncheon with keynote speaker Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Richard reminds, yeah, that's right, Boeing also located in Seattle, Everett, Washington, around that Puget Sound there. What a beautiful part of the world that is. There's just some crazy people out there. That's all I can say. But you can't deny the landscape is incredible. I'm not a big fan of the amount of rain and the constant cloudiness that you have in the great Pacific Northwest. But, man, when the sun's shining, which happens about 2 months a year, June being one of the prominent months for sunshine, it's the bluest sky you've ever seen. I mean, it really is gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a list of companies that are headquartered in Washington State.
Yep.
And just tech alone, you got Amazon, Microsoft, Expedia, Nintendo of America, and Valve Corporation.
Yeah. I didn't think about Expedia.
Retail and consumer goods, you got Costco, Starbucks, Nordstrom.
Nordstrom's, yeah.
In aerospace, you got Boeing, you got PACCAR, you got Weyerhaeuser, which that's not aerospace, that's more manufacturing and logistics. Yeah. And then you got stuff like services and travel with T-Mobile, Alaska Airlines, Avista.
That's unbelievable. And look, there's a lot to like about it. And up until now, not having an income tax has been a benefit. But now, nope, we got to go after them millionaires. And you know what they say they want to do with it? Create programs. I know that I laugh about that, but it's true. We need a program for this and a program for that and a program for this. That's all they think about.
It's almost like you have to be historically illiterate to be a liberal nowadays.
That's true.
Because the income tax was originally only for the wealthy.
Exactly right.
And then that wasn't enough money, so they kept ratcheting it down farther and farther until everybody had to.
And I've talked about it earlier in the week.
And they start carving it out for the people they want to vote for them so that they don't have to. And yeah.
No, you're right.
Now we're here.
Well, I tell you, I'm worried about even our friends on the right becoming enamored and somewhat blinded by reality from this America's Tax Cut Act being introduced by Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, and he's joined by a couple of others, Mark Kelly, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker. They're all in on it as well. They've all signed off and are co-sponsors of the Americans Tax Cut Act. Here's what bugs me. This particular legislation would exempt all single filers who make less than $46,000 from paying any federal income tax, $92,000 for married couples filing jointly, and $64,400 for heads of household. Limited to filers with an adjusted gross income below 175% of their exemption. That's about $80,000 for a single and $161,000 for married. In other words, what they're going to do, right now we have about 49% of American households not paying any federal income tax. This is going to jack that up to about 65%. So we will take 65%, an additional 20% roughly, off the tax rolls, resulting in 2/3 of the households in the country paying zero income taxes. And, of course, they're going to raise it on 5% on adjusted gross income above $1 million, 10% total above $2 million, and then 12% total above $5 million. And, of course, that's okay with them because they can afford it. And this idea of creating tax policy on the basis of who can afford it is just wrong. That's biased. That's discriminatory. It's confiscatory. That's not how we should make tax policy. And it doesn't matter anyhow because we're still going to have $2 trillion deficits. It's not like they're going to use any additional income, and I believe this would create less income. That's what I believe. It's not like we're going to earmark that to trim the deficit and pay debt. No, you're not. You're going to create more programs. In this window, out the other. From this group to that group. Further dividing us into a nation of producers and recipients from a tax perspective.
And pay no attention to the fact that the number was bigger when it came in than when it went out. Just ignore that. That's not a big deal.
It's exactly right. They skim off the top is what they do. We are out of here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your engagement on the C Spire text line. Back with you again on Monday. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
Your home for Ole Miss sports. A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.